Looking at a classic today, but we're going to do it a little different. We're going to compare it to a tribute book. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Daryl. I am the host of Read Your Comics, and a couple of months ago I did a video that looked at a comparison between FF number 1 and a tribute book done much like this one. At the time, I didn't have this X-Men book, and I mentioned it in that video, and I looked into it just a few weeks later. I was at a show and happened to find it. I wasn't even really looking for it at the moment, but I went to a box, and there it was. Had to grab it. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of do the same thing again. If you enjoyed that FF video, hopefully you'll enjoy looking at this one too. Now, I have read Giant Size X-Men probably a dozen times over the last 35-ish years or so. So I didn't really take the time to read it again to jump into this. It's such a well-trodden story that I think most X-Men fans have probably had so many opportunities to read this reprint of at this point that it's kind of redundant just to go over story aspects of it. So today we're really going to focus mostly on the art. It is a tribute to Ween and Cockrum, but since they're really kind of sticking to all of the words from Ween, it's more of a tribute to Cockrum, I think. Every page in this is done by a different artist, just like the FF book. And if you missed that video, I'll go ahead and add a link to it right here. Be sure to check it out at some point. I also have an X-Men playlist. I'll link it as well. And before I get started, as always, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. You wouldn't believe how many return viewers I get by people that aren't subscribed. You know, a lot of times YouTube will keep feeding you people even though you may not be subscribed, but eventually they stop. So if you're liking these videos, enjoying it, be sure to make sure you're subscribed. All right, let's take a quick look at this cover. Adi Granov doing the cover here. I like Adi Granov a lot. My only critique really is that it's dark. It's really dark in this area, so you kind of lose some of the detail of Colossus running forward here. And much like Alex Ross, Adi Granov is going to really lean into what is like physically possible positioning and camera angles and stuff. Whereas, you know, older artists or older comic cartoonists like this, some of these positions and perspectives and stuff just aren't quite as feasible. You know, we're going to move Storm a little bit up and kind of out of the way, bring Colossus, push him back just a little bit since Wolverine's more in the foreground. But I do like this interpretation of the cover. So it's definitely kicking off the tribute well. Facsimile edition, my complaint is always going to be putting the barcode on the cover right here. Marvel, why are you doing that? Put it on the back. Nobody would care if it was right there. All right, let's go ahead and move in. All right, this tribute book starts with, you know, what this is about. Just a little read up there. So let's go ahead and look at the artist lineup here. We got Kevin Nolan, Chris Somney, Marcus Tu, a lot of names I'm not really even familiar with. Mark Brooks, Phil Noto, Lanil Francis Yu, who does his own X-Men run several times, actually. Pepe Larraz and Mike Del Mundo. Those are kind of the names I'm familiar with. A lot of these guys I don't even really know. This did come out before the FF book, I want to say, and I missed this one. And then I picked up that FF one, thankfully, and I believe there's one more. I think there's a Captain America one out there that exists. So let's go ahead and compare him to the Dave Cockrum page here. This is clearly Alex Ross. So Adi Granov, photorealistic cover, first page of the book, getting an Alex Ross page. Bam. As I said, Alex Ross is going to do the same thing. He's going to make sure that these proportions and perspectives are a little bit more realistic and accurate than what we're going to see right here. It's always funny to see when Alex Ross, not a recreation like this, but when he actually paints over the pencils of one of these guys, and you can tell it's almost like he's fighting his natural instincts to add that realism into it. But in this instance, he's obviously able to just kind of do it exactly how he wanted to just recreate it whole cloth. Interesting, he decided to go with like kind of a skyline up here, like clouds, instead of just this abstract wavy colors. I always loved Cockrum's Beast with those like wild looking eyes that he put on him. Iceman built more like a kid here than there. He's definitely more of a man, full grown man shape. Alrighty. Some of my favorite pages here, these early Nightcrawler pages. This is the Chris Somney page, I believe. Oh no, this is Kevin Nolan. This looks great. I love this Kevin Nolan page a lot. Early Nightcrawler by Cockrum was a little stalky. Now, Cockrum actually created Nightcrawler. He's the one that designed him from the ground up, came up with him and everything. Now, he kind of just did a design. As the story goes, he wanted to use it on DC's Legion of Superheroes, but they either rejected it or he was just working at Marvel at the time, so he brought it into X-Men and we're all the better for it. But he's a little bit wider and stockier here, whereas Nolan definitely takes the lankier approach to drawing Nightcrawler, and he sticks panel for panel with what Cockrum originally did. This is the Chris Samnee page, and man, this makes me want a Nightcrawler mini-series by Chris Samnee so bad. Like, this looks incredible, I think. Coloring is always going to be an issue. I'm just going to go ahead and say it up front. That was the biggest critique. All the comments were saying on the FF one was modern coloring just kind of drags down some of the line art. I mean, of course, when you're comparing to Kirby in that book, everybody's like, oh, Kirby was the better storyteller. Of course, but ultimately, it always came back to the coloring. Nobody really seemed to appreciate the modern coloring. Now, the colors still remain pretty flat on the Samnee page. They're just so dark with the taking out the contrast compared to like the bright yellows here, and they reduce them down to these like kind of washed out oranges and stuff. But Chris Samnee, phenomenal artist that I love. He would do an awesome Nightcrawler miniseries. Got the ads. Still sticking to the basic layout here. I think some of the artists, as we go through this tribute book, are going to take a little bit more freedom with the layouts, but these first few pages, they're definitely just sticking to what worked the first time. Kind of exposing Nightcrawler a little bit more with the stake going on to him there than you see right there. I would say that this layout, this perspective, is a little bit of an improvement. And so far, despite the artist changing from page to page, Nightcrawler's looking pretty consistent. This is Marcus 2 and Sonny Gao. I don't know either of them, but I like this artwork pretty well. Again, coloring kind of dragging it down a bit. Classic page here of Wolverine's, whatever number you want to say the appearance is. This is where we really start to learn about the character. Those Hulk issues that he first appeared in, you don't get much out of that. He shows up, he says he's got retractable claws, and his name is Wolverine. They fight a little bit, and that's all you get out of the character. But we're going to start really learning more about Wolverine starting right here. Again, sticking to this same layout. This is Sia Alm, another artist I'm unfamiliar with, but I dig the build of Wolverine on this. I like how they did the mask in that classic style that Cockrum added to it. Of course, this was the change in the mask from the cat style that showed up in the Hulk books. But this is pretty solid. Professor X looking a little beefy right there, but otherwise solid. Everybody's got thick necks compared to this guy. Wolverine having a thick neck makes sense. Professor X and this general guy a little less so. Still just sticking to that basic layout. That Storm page is going to be a big difference. All right, we're breaking a little bit here. Keeping our top three the same and changing it up in this section. Kind of combining, giving this one a little bit more room to breathe. This is a great shot. Notice they have his claw coming out of his knuckle there. They don't have the little channel guides, whatever those things are on his gloves. This is Steven Segovia. I'm just going to butcher their names if I don't know who they are. I like this. This looks like Leinil Yu to me, but it's not. And I do like how he centered that up a little bit. Mask is getting a little wonky on the head. Taking this panel down from, I mean, this almost looks like he's cutting the guy's chest open in this panel. I always thought that at first until you realize that he's just like ripping his tie and then just reducing these down. Now this Storm page takes quite the turn. Look at the layout here. This has always been one of my favorite Cockrum pages, particularly this panel right here of her standing in the wind with her hair blowing everywhere, her skirt that she's wearing blowing in it. I mean, this has always been a favorite page of introducing Storm. I like how Banshee only gets 2 panels. Hey, you want to come join us up? Sure, why not? So let's see how that translated into this one. All right, the Storm page is by Margaret Salvage. Again, and I'm familiar. I don't love the reinterpretation of this layout. It's well drawn. I just don't love the way it's laid out into this montage piece as opposed to these individual panels. This is our first introduction to this character. I love this panel. It's one of my favorite Storm panels from this issue. I think getting rid of that and replacing it with essentially this little bit, it doesn't work the same way. Uh, it's funny that she kept the two top panels relatively the same, but just decided to take all the liberties with the introduction of Storm here, which I understand. You want to kind of do a splash page of Storm. You only get one chance to do this, but I think this layout works much better, even though she did try to incorporate everything into it. It's like you're taking this little like altar panel out of it too, with the lightning, sizzling around her and stuff. So well drawn, but I don't love the reinterpretation of the page. Kind of similar idea here. Cameron Carino did this one, kind of kept it the same layout essentially, widened this one up just a smidgen. I think the angle that Cockrum took to have Storm kind of laying across the whole panel is a little better than just this levitating straight up in the center of the panel. If you're going to have a big panel like there, show her whole body. Closing in a little bit on her. I do like the hair flow a little bit better than just, kind of straight lines that we see here. Just adding like fuller body to her hair, but otherwise, I mean, kind of at least kept the story structure the same. All right, this next one, we got taking some liberties again with the layout. And I am going to say, in fairness, this one was a hard page to be assigned because you've got to wrap up the Storm story, reintroduce Sunfire, because this isn't his first appearance, and then start the Colossus story all on one page. That's always been kind of a bugaboo, I feel like, about Giant Size X-Men is, it's like Nightcrawler gets his own page, Wolverine gets his own page, Storm gets like two pages or a page and a half almost. And some of these characters like Banshee, they're just like real quick, oh, these characters have been around before, so let's do them on a couple of panels on somebody else's page. Probably maybe should have combined Sunfire and Banshee instead of using them in between like these new characters, but whatever. This one's Bernard Chang. I don't love the layout change. I get why he wanted to, kind of highlight Sunfire doing something a little bit more than just a standard superhero pose out in the garden, have him kind of flame on and fly up. I like that aspect, and I understand why he wanted to make that change. And it was a hard page because you're wrapping up the Storm panels. He pretty much kept it straightforward, just thinned them up. Wanted to add a little bit more to the scene with, a close-up of pouring the tea and the conversation with Xavier. We don't even really see Xavier other than this tiny little spot back here. So kind of removing him from the story flow, I wouldn't say great. But in fairness, that's like this tribute thing is kind of like a, hey, take a chance to just do your interpretation of a page and you're not in charge of the whole story layout. So they're just kind of trying to make the most out of the one page they get to work on. And then we're introducing the start of Colossus, keeping it pretty straightforward as well. Nice hostess ad. Always love seeing those. All right, then we got Andy Cooter, and I think he did a page in the FF one as well. He definitely has a more streamlined style, not overdoing it on the, intricate line work detail. I like his work. It's very clean here. I like that the narration boxes are kind of smaller to open up this panel a little bit more and get more of a view of the farm that they're on. But I think the coloring, again, like you have the contrast between the silhouettes of the people to really grasp that this tractor is kind of running away towards something here. Like I can barely even make out that that's like a child figure. It just looks like more rubble right there. But here I can definitely make it out. I like this magenta energy kind of blasting off. Although I do like the waves of the energy here. I like that it's more the coloring again more on this one as well. Ilyana looks kind of different here. And this looked like I was like, is she wielding a knife? I think it's a shovel though. She's got kind of like a sand bucket. Why is she playing with a sand bucket and a shovel out in the field? I guess she's doing the same thing there, but look, she's got more of like a little beach shovel versus this like pointed shovel on this one's kind of funny. And she also looks more like a 12 or 13-year-old out here doing it. In this, she looks like she's about 4. So quite a difference. This panel works a little better if I Cockrum too, because you've got the tractor a little wider. It's a little too narrow there. You can still tell it's like a tractor exploding. This page is Takashi Miyazawa. I'm unfamiliar with that name as well. Keeping the layout pretty much exactly the same, doing a little panel breaking right there. My biggest critique of this page is Colossus looks small. He's too skinny. I mean, he looks big here. Look at him here. Like you see, this panel was drawn specifically to show that bicep, to show how big his arms are, and like you just crop that completely out right there. And same here. This is meant to show like how broad shouldered he is and barrel chested, but here he's like kind of skinny. He's built more like Namor as opposed to, a large Russian dude, I guess. I don't know. These panels work a little bit better. This panel, anyway, works a little bit better than this one with him saying goodbye to his family. I think this one, too, to some degree, with Xavier being a little far back and not so like right on top of the goodbyes going on from just like a mood setting perspective. But otherwise, I like the way this is drawn. I like the line work. Coloring on it's pretty decent. I just don't like how small Colossus looks. All right, Juan Cable doing this. I can tell Juan is a talented artist. I don't love the panel flow change up on this. I feel like this is conveying the speed at which he is running to keep up with the bison much more than these two panels. And he's kind of just changing the angles. Like, I mean, he's definitely running pretty quickly there, and something's just getting lost in the back of the animal here compared to his chest. I think grabbing the horns here works a lot better than this close up of his face straining. So generally, I think the layout of this page is better. Maybe the top of with the finishing up of Colossus works a little better at the top of the page, but I think setting the mood in this one panel works like this should have all been essentially this. Well drawn, but I don't like the change up of the story structure on it. Guri Hiru, another artist I'm unfamiliar with. This looks like YA graphic novel style to me. I don't hate it, but it tends to be kind of homogenous when I look at it a lot of times. Generally, when I've looked at something from that category of comics, I really judge it on like story flow, and that's hard to grasp from this since they were just kind of recreating what we see on the page here. Almost exactly the same. The detail on Xavier there, I always wonder if like the shadow, something got away from him that they had to ink over. So who gets to do the splash page? That's what I would like to know from this type of book is when they issue this out, do they assign pages to specific artists that they want to see do it, or do they just send out a notice to every artist that they want to be involved and say, we got 60 pages to do, first come, first serve on which page you want to participate in. Let us know by X date or whatever. But Mark Brooks gets to do this splash page. It's a little over rendered, I'm going to say. The dark tones and stuff just start to blend in with each other. This isn't really like an art style that I would like to see a whole book done in or anything. And kind of like Adi Granov and Alex Ross, he really wanted to take the time to like fix perspective and proportions and such. Whereas something like this, like Nightcrawler, feels a little squeezed in, for instance, really modernizing Banshee's hair, taking that 70s hair away. Anyway, he kind of lucked out getting to do that page, right? Chris Anaka. I don't know. I like this. I like the coloring on it, especially because we've got the kind of standard flat coloring, but This Dave Cockrum Cyclops breaking the panel here, his visor being like big. This has more impact than this for sure, because you've got just like a flat background going on back here, and him just leaving a lot of dead space in that area. Similar here, it's like the figures are taking up more panel than over here, despite these word balloons. They just broke these into two places for the original versus this one. You get a better look at all the characters here. Like the coloring on this page. I don't think the way that he decided to kind of change up a couple of the panels really quite worked, though. We got Phil Noto, keeping it pretty much to the original here. Not too much changes going on. Biggest differences are going to be coloring again. I do like the Blackbird being, more black here, whereas here it's mostly white, like it's got more reflection, almost like chrome, with just black shadow, whereas it definitely looks more like a stealth ship here. And I do kind of like this red tone from the cockpit because it's got the red glare of the windshield versus just the flat coloring of the original. But otherwise, not too much difference going on here. Now we're in a weird spot where I gotta fold the book. Valerio Shaitai. Y'all are gonna have to help me with who some of these people are. Pros and cons to the layout change, I would say. This always feels a little too condensed. You get a better look of the island there. And, this came out around the time that the Krakoa storyline was starting. So, kind of interesting to go back to that and definitely get a better look of the island there than here. Better shot of the Blackbird landing, I would say, than these two, condensing this. This is just better. This is just better. It really is. Um, this one, this might be a better layout, though, as a replacement for this one. Getting a better look at Havoc, bringing Iceman to the foreground. He's looking much more teenager-like than he is here. Although, so is Havoc, really. His face is looking a little worn. And we're throwing Jean in there as well. Might as well push Angel back to the background. Got him kind of in the centered up right there. That panel versus just like something small at the bottom. This always feels like, oh, I got to get this like squeezed in. And this feels very much just like some digital paint effect. Not really drawn. Now we're getting Lanil Yu, well-worn X-Men artist right here. In fact, he was probably doing the Hickman X-Men series or gearing up for it around the time this came out. So I guess they're like, look, man, you get to draw a lot of X-Men, so all you get is this page of Cyclops in a ripped up costume as he's heading back after escaping Krakoa the first time. And it's definitely not something of his best work, for sure. He may have phoned this one in kind of quickly, that they just wanted to get a well-known X-Men artist in there. Although this panel, I think, works better than just this one alone. And the layout of this one maybe works a little better over here too. Otherwise, this works better than this. Kind of the same, kind of the same. Quite a difference in these two pages. Matteo Lolly. I don't always love when panels blend into each other like that. You're kind of breaking that gutter framing. And it can work a lot of times, and sometimes it doesn't quite work, and I don't think it quite works here that well. And he wisely returns back to this standard down here. Although I will say, keeping that the same, I think this works better with Wolverine being a little bit more front and center. And I think this works better with Sunfire, who is doing most of the talking in the panel, being brought to the front. Please be an ad so I don't have to keep folding these. Ima Lupacino. Doing it pretty much by the numbers all around on here. Changing up the position of Sunfire. His headpiece looks a little weird right there from that angle. Just slightly pulling up Nightcrawler's head a little bit. Not going off script too much there. Carlos Gomez. I kind of like his layouts a little better sitting here looking at it. I like Wolverine looking out the window to the island a little bit better than what's going on right here. It just kind of gets lost. It's hard to tell that's what he's doing, is looking out the window. I kind of like the shot of the blackbird zooming into the island a little bit better. Although it should probably coming in more for a landing, it still seems like it's a little far away. So storytelling wise, the ship's about to land, so this probably makes more sense, but it's more establishing shot. And again, these artists, they're not really working with each other. They're just assigned a page and say, hey, reinterpret this page how you want to. But I kind of like some of the layouts a little better. I like the side views of them like sitting next. They look like they're actually sitting in seats next to each other as opposed to like being a little behind. I like the cavalier look of both Banshee and Wolverine, who, they're really kind of like old timers, although we didn't know that about Wolverine at the time. Get a little bit more character that we know of Nightcrawler now in that facial expression. And I like the way Banshee's kind of flying off right there. I like the way Banshee's and Wolverine's panel is taking up a little bit more room right there as well. So I like this layout. Cockrum's probably getting a little tired at this point of the book as well. Ebon Coelho, playing it by the numbers, it appears. Putting a little bend just for some interest of panel shape. That's about it. I like this better than this. Well, I don't know. Actually, this kind of works too, because it's leaving this open area to show that the plane is gone. But I think this panel definitely works better. It's just sometimes it's like taking up more space inside the panel and really filling it out, as opposed to leaving up this like empty background area. RB Silva, same complaint here. This is just taking up more space, more dynamic, as opposed to this farther away establishing shot. Maybe that's a little better. I like the silhouettes there as well, kind of keeping it the same. This temple works a little better because it is silhouetted. Ramon Rosanas, going off script. I like the establishing shot panel up here a little better, but the story flow definitely working much better on the Cochran page as far as what is happening. The rubble coming down, Storm and Colossus kind of using their powers together. Just more clear what's happening over here. Joshua Cassara. I gotta admit, I like the crabs being shown from this angle better. I like seeing the crab faces coming up out of the water. Facial react. We don't even see their facial reactions. You just see their body reactions. But I think seeing the crab faces works a little better. Cool action shot of Wolverine. Either way, this works pretty cool, I think. I mean, over here, you're getting kind of the 30 years of hindsight of Wolverine and how he moves and how he fights. Whereas here, you're just having to have him jump in and start slashing. But you're getting more of the body mechanics that we know of Wolverine here. So unfair to compare those two in a way, but I do kind of like these could go either way, either direction. Banshee using his powers looks a little cooler over here too, to be quite honest. Overall, this is a well composed reinterpretation. David Baldian. I like when some of them, it's like they decide to keep the layout pretty much exactly the same and work with what's within the panels, but just kind of accentuate those panels a little bit more. I think I do like this a little bit more with Nightcrawler's positioning, a little more so than this. I don't like this one as much. It's hard to tell that, Nightcrawler's doing his BAMF in the same kind of manner that he's doing it here. Sunfire, actually using fire instead of kind of just generic energy blast works a little better, I would say. Otherwise, just kind of keeping it as is. Marcelo Ferrerio is the first one listed. I'm going to assume just straight up the penciler on that one. Colors are bogging this page down a lot. there's so many dark tones and no gutters, no panel gutters to break them up. I think the coloring on this page is really hampering it more than it should. I do like this bottom page, kind of recreating this. I like the general layout and the body positions a little better. Just the coloring making it just kind of mushed together. I do like this panel too, kind of recreating this one. There's things about this page and the layout that I actually really like a lot. I think just Colossus and Thunderbird's fist. I don't know who that's supposed to be. It was Wolverine. They added Wolverine's fist to it. I guess everybody's supposed to be. This is Cyclops Blast. Everybody's kind of fist breaking through the wall. I do think this works a little bit. It's more concise. This has a lot more open area. This panel works really well on this page, and we don't really get that as much on this one. It's harder to tell that they're walking into the temple right here, or even on this panel where they're walking up to the dead end. It's hard to tell exactly what's going on. But winners of this page are these bottom couple of panels kind of doing this. Man, that's going to be a good one in a second. Oh, I like this style a lot. Again, we're back to like more traditional comic colors, more contrast, which I like a lot. There's just so much going on this page that even it can get a little lost. See, in older comics, when there would be a lot going on the panel, they would kind of isolate the figures with just one color and do the background as another color and let the spotted blacks do a lot of the work. But in this, they're just going to color everything and stuff gets lost. You know, like I was just complimenting the coloring, but at the same time, that this technique conveys a lot more clearly sometimes than this does. But I do like this art style. Who is it? Rod Reese, who's the only person credited. I wonder if he does his own coloring as well. Quite the change up in the layout. I like this panel a lot more than this panel. In reverse of what I was just saying, this blanket purple back here kind of makes you lose the figure work. Whereas here we definitely get a clearer vision. And using the dark blue on Angel in the foreground, that works pretty well. This panel works a little bit better too. Less so here. I like this panel better than this one. We just discussed this one. I like how this is drawn. I really do. I just think that you lose something with all the different colors in the panel. This Krakoa rising up. I like Dave Cockrum's version. It's more. This almost looks like versus this, which is more like a roar. This looks more monstrous, whereas this looks kind of like a. Is this thing more friendly? I don't know. Let's pull this one around. You can't change this layout up. This had to stay the same. This is 1-to-1. It's really just a big coloring shift. All right, sorry I messed up. This is actually Javier Garron. This is actually Rod Reese, so sorry I messed up. And he just did paint by numbers. The only real difference I see on these two pages is the coloring. It almost, maybe a little in the shape of this nuclear cloud a little bit, but didn't change a thing. Don't blame him. This is a beautiful page, and I mean, it's just awesome to see Krakoa rising up like this. Why would you want to change anything there? But everything else, basically the same, just his own coloring, I suppose. Still, cool looking page, and it works. The coloring does get a little muddy, but it's a little muddy over here too, to be honest, because all of this is kind of flashback stuff. These two pages look wild. I like this reinterpretation right here of Krakoa. That is wild looking. These look completely different. Completely different pages here. Javier Lopez and went way off script. I do like the page. I do. You just get Krakoa attacking, which is kind of all that's happening here. He kind of just went with this. And he obviously wanted to do Storm close up. So can't really fault him there. I like the Zack from the eye beams. The way the mouth looks with the teeth. It's wild looking. I dig it. I like the detail of the extra palm trees on Krakoa's back. This looks cool. This is a cool layout. I'm not going to complain about it. And I like the coloring in it. I like the Storm. It's pretty much flat coloring. up here too. Just Krakoa has a little bit more of the like modern digital shading. Pepe Larraz, I think Pepe Larraz, didn't he do some like X-Men, like House of M and stuff? So he would have been doing some Krakoa things. And I gotta admit, I kind of like his layout a little better. It's a little clearer to tell what's going on because Krakoa is getting pushed back behind all the powers being used. Whereas here, you're getting a good shot of Krakoa and the characters trying to use their powers to little avail around. In fact, you can't even really see Thunderbird's doing anything, but at least here he's like lifting a hand and stuff. Havoc is a little more clear. Some perspectives are fixed a little bit. I don't know if this maybe got away from Cockrum a little bit. Sticking pretty much by the numbers on here too. I like this one a little better. Jen Bartel playing it pretty safe as well. I don't know if they chose the coloring to look exactly the same. I think this works a little better only because the dialogue box is more condensed. And it's like there's this giant gutter down at the bottom of the page right here that they don't have to work with, so they can bring everything down a little bit. And they can go full bleed. So they're able to spread Krakoa and Professor X a little bit apart. This works pretty well. More contrast coming out of the coloring right here. And this works pretty well too. I dig this page. It's funny how Cockrum had Storm's hair being pretty straight and like wispy. Everybody else likes to draw Storm's hair as being very full bodied and, curls and stuff floating around in it. This is Mike Del Mundo, also playing it pretty much by the numbers. Biggest change probably being this panel. Hard to tell what's happening here. The rain is supposed to make it like hard to see, I guess, but the coloring definitely gets muddy in this panel. I like Professor X's head coloring right here, though, as opposed to that one, because he wouldn't really be being rained over. You're seeing it in your mind. I think changing the color of Polaris's powers with storms into the green works better for the character there. I like the glow around Havoc's powers as well. But if you'll notice, it's like Havoc's powers actually go kind of like all around him. It doesn't just come out of his hands. Marco Cicchetto, or Cicchetto. This is a painted style. I'm going to assume digital painting. Like always, things kind of get lost. Although you can kind of see the volcanic mountain of Krakoa exploding better here than back here. It almost looks like they forgot to color it into a explosion in that panel. Simple changes like turning of the head. The rain that makes some of the detail of Krakoa in these Cochrane panels get lost, and they're just kind of, we're not even going to mess with it here. Changing Cyclops positioning, not too out there. You do have him kind of like floating almost. He doesn't look like he's running. And able to squeeze a few more characters in, like Cyclops running in the background there, and Banshee flying up as well. Oh, sorry. Like messed up again. This is Raza. This is Mike Cicchetto. This looks really good. I like the way this looks. The water rendering, just better printing technology allows for some of this kind of detail coming up, but I like the coloring on the island. It looks more organic. Cyclops looks a little young here, like more like a teenager. A little better focus on Iceman putting up an ice wall to stop the water from hitting them. He makes like a nice floating thing for him to land on as Krakoa gets thrown out into space. That works pretty well. And we're gonna wrap it up. X John Saw's X-Men does end abruptly. It's almost like classic style for that reason. So Mike Hawthorne wraps it up. Back to the flat coloring. I like this a little better. This panel works better, I think. than this one. The ship rising up, pretty much the same. Not too much to really discuss here. I don't like this blurred Photoshop effect there. That was overdone in the 90s, and it hasn't gotten any better. Otherwise, again, kind of painting by the numbers. I do think overall this book goes... Oh, they didn't do these pages. And then the tribute book kind of wraps up with a little story of Len Wein and Dave Cockrum here, and Chris Claremont kind of looking back on. Of course, Claremont didn't have anything to do with X-Men, Giant Size X-Men #1. It's funny how much thinner this feels because there's no ads in it, and it's just the one story, whereas this Giant Size X-Men has ads, and it also has this, this stuff in the back, like detailing the characters, which isn't in the tribute book. Overall, though, I think a lot of the artists in this took a little bit more liberties than they did in the Fantastic Four one. And it's all hindsight. They get to play with a little bit more of what we know of the characters and their movements, their fighting styles, how they use their powers. That's all been so developed at this point, whereas in the original, they were just trying to figure it all out on the fly as they went. So fun tribute book. Definitely grab it if you see it out there. I like seeing stuff like this. Nothing's ever going to compare to the original versions, but it's neat to see modern artists do their own interpretations of this stuff. The coloring is always kind of the drawback for me anyway, but it doesn't stop me from enjoying the new take on it. There's one more of these floating around out there that I don't have. I think there's a Captain America one. I'd love to see an Avengers one or a Spider-Man or a Hulk version of this. I mean, what issues would you put in it? If it was a Spider-Man one, what issues would you include? Obviously, Amazing Fantasy 15, but that's kind of thin. Would you do Amazing Spider-Man #1? Would you keep it Ditko and maybe do like a Amazing Spider-Man 33? Or would you do a Ramita issue? What other issue would you include in it? Same goes for Hulk. Obviously, Hulk 1, but do you throw in a Tales to Astonish storyline too to fill it out? But Marvel hasn't done one of these in a while. It'd be nice to see them do more stuff like this again. I feel like they are playing it a little too safe by just pumping out these kind of facsimiles instead of doing something more creative like this. But that's it for this one. Until next time, read your comics.